So today is a very momentous day for CSIR's project on Unit on Traditional Knowledge Teaching Library. So we'll be deliberating on 20 years, what has been achieved and the way forward. So before we go to the details, I would also like to announce that CSIR is going to start its 80th year of foundation on September 26, 2021, and will complete 80 years in the next year. We decided to do a small campaign to showcase how CSIR as a previous scientific organization, which was established in 1942, the contributions to the society, the bringing of various stories of CSIR. So there will be 80 years next year. We said 80 stories of success stories of CSIR we got in the public, just to highlight how a brilliant organization like CSIR has contributed to social economic development in the country. And while we were deliberating on this, we thought it's an opportune moment that we launched the campaign today with the success of TKD, which is completed in many years. So the first success story we will review today is traditional knowledge, digital library. We have a galaxy of speakers really from various departments and also from WIPO. So it's nice to celebrate this event with all the people who came with us as partners during this journey of TKDL. And it's always nice to celebrate with friends and well-wishers and also the stakeholders. So most of you know that India is really the treasure of traditional knowledge, and India has always been very open with its science and sharing the knowledge. But when there was a threat to this traditional knowledge from various patenting by various multinational organizations and countries, so I think immediately India took some corrective actions, and it was led by CSIR. I think this is a very good example of how CSIR has contributed, being a scientific organization. And you can see it's a very responsible and responsive organization. Whenever there is a calamity, CSIR has come to the fore and displayed it. Even today, during COVID, you are seeing that CSIR has played a stellar role. And similarly, when you are talking of Haldi patent or Basmati rice, which was being patented, immediately CSIR, along with the various ministries, like Ministry of Ayush and other sister organizations, has developed this database of traditional knowledge to safeguard India's traditional knowledge. So going forward, I would like to request DG CSI, Dr. Shekhar C. Mandate, to give his opening remarks.
Thank you, Geeta. Dr. Mashikar, Vidya Kotejaji, Mr. Mahapatra, Ms. Begona Venero, and all those people who have joined us here on the e-platform. We anticipate that several of our labs and a few thousand people are watching this program live on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, and other means. It's a great moment for us to be celebrating 2 decades of TKDL. Dr. Mashikar probably will go deeper into the history, but I just wanted to say that when this movement actually started, the TKDL is rather a moment. DPIIT was still known as DIPP, and Ministry of Ayush was still ISM and H, a department in Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. And there was a time when the first time we all awoke to the patent on Haldi, and India successfully fought that particular patent. It was the University of Mississippi, I believe, which had filed the patent. And under the leadership of Dr. Mashikar, and in collaboration with DIPP and Ministry of Health and Family Welfare and other departments of the country, CSIR indeed took the lead to fight the patent off. But what started them was a small thought process in which we believed that we could catalog our traditional knowledge, and what we are here today is as a result of what started the process in 1995. I believe. So it has taken a great journey to reach this particular stage. On today's date, the digital library has close to 4 lakh entries. With the Kotejaji is aware of it, he and I together, we have been mentoring TKDL's group of people on taking some strategic decisions and all. And about 4 lakh entries, and very recently we also thought that until now TKDL had focused on the traditional medicine aspects, that is Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, and so on and so forth. But there's also room to actually expand cataloging our digital knowledge in many other different areas. And the things that have been talked about were things like metallurgy, archaeology, and so on and so forth. So basically, there is a tremendous scope ahead of us, and also a tremendous scope of seeing how this can be made more accessible and useful to many different stakeholders. And those kind of discussions are very much on. And thankfully, Ministry of Ayush and CSIR are completely on the same wavelength on many different aspects, not only TKDL, but also on trying to see how many of the Ayush formulations we can do clinical trials from the modern science perspective and so on and so forth. And that actually helps the partnership with Ministry of Ayush since the 1990s and with the DPIIT since that time actually has helped a great deal to bring us to this particular extent. So I'm particularly pleased that all of you are here today for the celebrations of the 20 years of TKDL. So thank you all very much and welcome everyone once again to this particular program.
Thank you, Dr. Mandate, for the very brief and succinct comments and on the way forward. Now I request Dr. Vishwajanani Satyagiri, who is heading the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library Unit, to present the highlights of the work being carried out by TKD.
Thank you, Geeta. Dear Dr. Mashikar, former DG CSIR and Secretary DSIR, Ms. Veniro, Senior Counselor, Traditional Knowledge Division, Badipur, Vaidikotechaji, Secretary, Ministry of Ayush, Sri Mahapatraji, Secretary, Department for Promotion of Industry and Internet Trade, Dr. Manti, DG CSIR and Secretary DSIR, distinguished guests and participants, colleagues and friends. Good afternoon and thank you for joining us on this joyous occasion of 2 decades of TKDL. The prevalent public notion is that traditional knowledge and modern sciences and technology cannot go together. But let me present to you a live example of the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library that has stood against this popular belief. And that too by the unprecedented integration of widely different domains, namely the traditional systems of medicine and information technology. When faced with grave situations, we think the unthinkable, and the solutions that we bring about effectively ease the challenges in front of us. The story of TKDL is along these lines. During the mid-90s, as my predecessors just mentioned, India witnessed the grant of patents worldwide on inventions related to its traditional knowledge, passed on from generations to generations over thousands of years. Some prominent cases of such patents are the wound healing properties of turmeric by the USPTO in 1995, the fungicidal properties of neem at EPO in 1994, and the basmati lines and grains at USPTO in 1997. The grant of intellectual property rights by way of patents amounted to misappropriation of and the consequential loss of India's rights on our valuable traditional knowledge. The visionaries, Dr. Mashikar, the then DG CSIR, and Mrs. Shailaja Chandra, the then Secretary, Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, spearheaded efforts to tackle the challenges of misappropriation of our traditional knowledge. The TKDL owes its existence to the interdisciplinary and interministerial efforts from India. The task force on TKDL drew experts from CSIR, Department of Indian Systems of Medicine and Homeopathy, that is now the Ministry of Ayush, Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion, now the DPIIT, and the Central Council of Research in Ayurveda and Siddha, CCRAS, Banaras Hindu University, National Informatics Center, Controller General of Patents Design and Trademarks, among many others. The World Intellectual Property Organization, WIPO, played a stellar role by guiding and supporting the Indian efforts on the TKDL. The task force recommended that the TKDL be set up as a prior art database to act as a robust mechanism to proactively preempt instances of grant of wrong patents on Indian traditional knowledge. The primary mandate of the TKDL was to prevent misappropriation of the Indian traditional knowledge. With the approval of the Cabinet Committee for Economic Affairs on 24th January 2001, the TKDL started small, targeting only Ayurveda, and that too, the plan was to transcribe the information from only 14 texts, classical texts. The information was to be transcribed and provided as prior art information. But as years rolled on and the confidence grew, we added information from the other systems of medicine, namely Unani, Siddha, and also the Yogasanas. Very recently, we have also started including information from the Sovarikpa, which is the Himalayan system of medicine, as well as information on Kerala Ayurveda from the manuscripts. Take a pause and then connect you to the modern sciences here. Interestingly, the literature from modern sciences indicate that in the last 40 years, just about 1900 drugs have been approved by regulatory bodies worldwide. And another interesting fact is that the Ayush industry today covers just about 700 formulations. Let me draw your attention to the traditional knowledge of India, especially in the systems of medicine. The TKDL database now contains about 4 lakh formulation from all the systems of medicine, that is Ayurveda, Unani, Siddha, Sovarikpa, and the Yogasanas, and we are still counting. So this kind of tells the vastness of our traditional knowledge and the immense value it has to drive innovation in the country as well as global around. Change is constant, while growth and development are a necessity. India is a country of rich knowledge and tradition across diverse domains, be it agriculture, medicine, archaeology, astronomy, astrology, chemical and physical sciences, aeronautics, shipbuilding, and many more. The TKDL aspires to expand its scope of the database by inclusion of information from the other domains. As we plan to move forward, we propose to also include the other valuable information from the Indian systems of medicine. This includes the dietary interventions, the tools, including the surgical practices, disease diagnostics, and many more. We plan to initiate inclusion of Indian traditional knowledge from agricultural practices and allied areas, metallurgy, geographical indications, and many more. Information from digitized and published manuscripts as well as oral traditional knowledge is also proposed to be included in the TKD database. As one would appreciate, oral traditional knowledge is associated with sensitivity, confidentiality, and as well as people's rights. The TKDL unit is working to streamline the documentation and other related processes associated with the oral traditional knowledge. We hope to create a national database of all Indian traditional knowledge in the years to come and hope to boost integration and co-optation of traditional knowledge and modern sciences. We believe traditional knowledge inspired innovation across SNT domains will be a valuable option to address national and global good. I'm pleased to inform you that the TKDL has been serving the primary mandate of safeguarding Indian traditional knowledge and preventing misappropriation. Access of the database is given to patent offices that are assigned. It's suffocating, sorry. Yeah, it's been given to 13 patent offices worldwide, and this includes the USPTO, EPO, and Indian Patent Office as well. To supplement the efforts of the patent offices, the CSIR TKD Unit also examines patent applications that have any relevance to our Indian traditional knowledge. Along these lines, since 2009, we've been filing pre-grant oppositions and third-party observations on those patent applications that have any relevance to our traditional knowledge. This particular activity has delivered significant outcomes. In about 239 such cases, we have been able to ensure that the patents are either withdrawn, revoked, or amended suitably. I'm also pleased to inform you that the TKDL database, which was the first of its kind globally, has been serving as an exemplary case to all those nations that are associated with traditional knowledge. China, Korea, Thailand, Philippines, and Malaysia have all emulated us, and they have their own TKDL now. TKDL continues to draw synergy from the complementarity of similar efforts from other organizations. We are working very closely with the National Biodiversity Authority, especially with regards to people's
biodiversity. National Biodiversity.
Yeah, National Biodiversity Authority for the People's Biodiversity Register. And the Honeybee Network, Asian Agri-History Foundation, Center for Development of Advanced Computing, and others. The Ministry of Ayush and its constituents continue to help us achieve our objectives. We cherish the association a lot. And with the TPIIT, we've been working closely to make sure that the TKDL is accepted for inclusion under the PCT minimum documentation. The efforts are on. And we look forward to strengthening this association with the DPIIT to include the other intellectual property provisions such as the geographical indications and others. There have been numerous experts from diverse fields who have helped us all through these years tremendously in building the TKDL database. They continue to help us grow. The systems and structure that we put in place way back in 2001 has served all through the years, is relevant today and for tomorrow as well. And this has been the contribution by all these people. On this milestone of 20 years of TKDL, I, on behalf of the CSIR and the CSIR TKDL unit, express my deep gratitude to all of them. It is indeed a memorable association with each of you. I also take this opportunity to thank DG CSIR for including TKDL under the jewels, under the new campaign of CSIR, the 80 years and 80 success stories. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you once again, every one of you. Namaskar. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Vishwajanani, for really taking us through the journey of how it started as a small seed and has grown into a big national database today, and also the leading example for other countries who wish to preserve their traditional knowledge going forward. So now we have addressed by the various guests of honor. So first, I would like to introduce Dr. Vaidya Rajesh Pateja, who is the Secretary Ministry of Ayush. Vaidya Rajesh Pateja ji did his MD in Ayurveda from Gujarat Ayurveda University. He's very well known for his Ayurveda, and he's also published a book, A Beginner's Guide to Ayurveda, which I believe is a very popular book in a very simplistic way. Prior to becoming the Secretary with Ministry of Ayush, he was the Vice Chancellor of Gujarat Ayurveda University, and he has been honored with the prestigious Pakistani Award. Thank you, Dr. Pateja ji, for joining us, and please request you to give you the address.
Thank you, Honorable Dr. Mashikar ji, my colleagues in Government of India, Sri Mohapatra ji, Sri Shekhar Mandate ji, CSIR TKDL Head, Dr. Vishwajanani ji, Ms. Beguna Venero, and all other participants and all other friends who is watching this live program on the occasion of 20 years celebration of TKDL. I want to compliment the TKDL for this achievement that I'm going to mention. It's very interesting that parallelly CSIR is also on the 80 years of CSIR, they are celebrating 80 success stories. And out of these 80 success stories, TKDL is appearing as a first success story. So my compliments to TKDL. This is a benchmark and landmark kind of project which was successfully implemented by various agencies of Government of India as a knowledge partner from Ministry of Ayush, executing agency or partner from CSIR, and facilitating from DPIIT. And this is also a landmark achievement from Government of India to prevent the patenting or wrongful patenting of public knowledge, knowledge which is owned by the community. So this has set a benchmark. In addition, I want to mention that recently we have also started documenting with the CSIR has started documenting Soarikpa knowledge and started a unit in Leh in one of our institute of Soarikpa in the Leh, Ladakh. So expanding horizons is one of the best thing, and I think what Dr. Vishwajanni said and what Dr. Mandate said, that in addition to the medicine aspect of traditional knowledge, it is good to expand the wings of the traditional documentation. I am also acknowledging and appreciating and with my pranams to Dr. Mashikar ji, who is here. And when all these things were started, I am aware and I know that Dr. Mashikar ji was heading then CSIR. And later he became the chairman of this interministerial committee at WIPO. So he was instrumental to get this TKD recommendation and specification adopted by WIPO in the session, fifth session on the Intergovernmental Committee of WIPO on Intellectual Property and Genetic Resources, Traditional Knowledge and Expression of Folklore. So at one end, Dr. Mashikar ji was instrumental into getting this database, and this thing happened and this executed in India. Later, as a president of this intergovernmental committee, he was also able to convince the other stakeholders countries and adopt this resolution in the WIPO. So his contribution is enormous, and we all are thankful to you, sir, for this great contribution. Recently, as mentioned by Dr. Mandate, we are working in so many other areas with CSIR, and we have a great harmony in recent times. Probably after Dr. Mashelkar's time, this is the another era of golden period of like collaboration of CSIR and Ayush. And we have a joint working group headed by advisor of Ayush and TKDL head Dr. Vishwajanni. And they are devising visualizing lot of different collaborative projects. One of the great example is that in the COVID times, Ayush CSIR partnered in these large-scale clinical studies, randomized controlled trials at multi-centered in India with certain candidates, 4 candidates, either as an add-on therapy or as a standalone therapy or a prophylaxis. So, and then now these studies are being completed, and what we found is very interesting. One of the observation is that ashwagandha is equally effective as a immunomodulator as HCQ, hydroxychloroquine. So this is one of the outcome what this partnership has achieved. And there are another clinical studies also are proving that that these candidates from the traditional medicine are equally effective and proving its worth. I also want to mention that at the same time, with the help of Department of Biotechnology, we have started preclinical studies and in vivo in vitro studies for mechanic studies for these candidates, what we were doing with the CSIR as a clinical study. And we found that these candidates, what we were studying here, are also having antiviral effect against COVID-19 or immunomodulatory or anti-inflammatory. So now we are at a firm footage that these medicines as a repurpose we can use in a different combination for the management of COVID-19. One of the outcome is that based on these evidences, Government of India with the help of Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, we were able to issue National Clinical Management Protocol for management of COVID-19 based on Ayurveda and Yoga. So this was also a never happened kind of thing. So it is all because of this great partnership with CSIR and then forward-looking thinking of the leadership of CSIR. So I personally want to thank Professor Mandate for that. There's another vertical is that we are also together. We are in a process of a thought process of that 400,000 the formulations are digitized, and it is a great resource of knowledge, is a knowledge pool. So as of now, we are using it for preventing fraud or preventing misappropriation of false claim of patenting, etc. But at the same time, if we intelligently open this up for the researchers, the database, then there is a huge possibility of creating another area of research. It could be different types of research, drug research, or even research on different mechanics, or research on methodology, or research on principles of Ayurveda and other traditional sciences. So we are in a thought process of how to open it up in a limited manner so that it can be used. This huge knowledge base can be used for the further exploration of researches. So this is also going on, and I'm sure that maybe something will come out in near future. I want to thank the organizers for inviting me for this wonderful occasion, and I want to assure for all the support from Ministry of Ayush, whatever is needed for this wonderful and very prestigious project of Government of India, this traditional knowledge digital library. Thank you. Namaskaram. Pranam.
Thank you, Honorable Patel for your kind words and offer of cooperation. We look forward to working with you. And thank you again for highlighting the work with TKDL and also the ongoing clinical trials for the coronavirus and many other joint efforts. Thank you again. Now, the next guest of honor we have is Dr. Guru Prasad Mahapatra, who is the Secretary, Department of Promotion of Industry and Intermediate. Dr. Mahapatra is an IAS officer, and he's worked in many important positions in the government. He was instrumental in implementing comprehensive reforms in the urban development and power sector in Gujarat. He's also filled the position of managing director in many PSUs, and he has also played a stellar role as working as the chairman of the Airports Authority of India and led to many reforms over there. Thank you, Dr. Professor Mahapatra for joining us, and please we look forward to your words as guest of honor.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta. Very respected and venerated figure in this field and expert in this field, former DG CSIR and Secretary DSIR, Dr. Mashikar. My colleague and current DG CSIR and Secretary DSIR, Dr. Mandate. Another colleague and from Gujarat, Secretary Minister of Ayush, Mr. Kotecha. Ms. Begona Venero, Senior Counselor from WIPO, Dr. Viswajanani Satigari, who is the head of this CSIR Traditional Knowledge Digital Library Unit and who played an instrumental role in motivating me and persuading me to attend this. Thank you so much. At the outset, my sincere thanks to Dr. Mandate for giving me this opportunity to be a part of this activity while it is piloted by CSIR. The legal framework is something which we look after in the Department of Promotion of Industry. I have been involved in the COVID management work of Government of India by being a member and chairman of the FOR group on procurement for COVID equipment in the immediate aftermath of COVID. That time, from that absolute sense of desperation when the COVID suddenly struck parts of China to start with and then enveloped the whole world, including India. We are always underprepared. We didn't know what this disease is. In fact, even now, most people don't know what this disease is. But at that time, it was feared that probably India would suffer one of the worst for obvious reasons. Huge population, huge country, various socio-economic differences among various strata of population, defining their access to quality healthcare, defining their access to modern facilities. So it was feared that India will probably have one of the worst forms of COVID situation in the country, in the world, highest death rate, highest incidence rate, lowest recovery rate. These were the kind of doomsday predictions that were being made about India. I am not a man of medical science, I do not understand much, but we are all surprised, like the rest of the world, is why India, one is of course the government effort, there is no discounting that, but I believe that governments everywhere are always responsible enough to manage the responsibilities given to them. But probably something in the way the Indian way of life, the course, the faith and the recourse that the Indians do by default on falling back on their traditional wisdom and traditional knowledge is something which I strongly believe has helped us in managing this disease quite well. Whether it is the healing property of turmeric, healing property of ginger, the various other potions and liquids that we consume as a part of our growing up years leads us to all believe this solid foundational basis of our traditional knowledge. It's a huge country is not the issue, it's a country of huge history. Centuries and centuries of civilizations starting from the pre-Vedic age to the Vedic age to all the various kingdoms and monarchies and various ruling dispensations that have ruled India. India has been fortunate in developing a solid base of traditional knowledge with its own backing, reflections in literature sources, in scientific sources, in traditional publications. The only problem we face is that is not documented, that is not legally backed, and that is why this whole entire process, which at that time CSIR started, and we are today celebrating 20th year of this lab here. So I must compliment CSIR and the Department of Ayush and of course my own department and many others, including WIPO, for recognizing this very, very unique system of knowledge and acknowledging that it is the people who have a right to utilize this resource, this traditional knowledge, and not the companies or any commercial entities who would like to monopolize a traditional community-based knowledge for its own commercial benefits. In DPIIT, we have recognized it, and it's a very matter of great satisfaction for all of us that WIPO also recognizes this. And this is enshrined almost right in the WIPO Charter that various communities have access and legal rights to their community-based knowledge. So DPIIT has been doing it on many fronts. Geographical indicator is one such activity where we have done a lot of work in indicating and recognizing the geographical indicator. The only thing that we find today that while everybody acknowledges the role of geographical indicator, but there is probably a little, if one can say, there is probably what we see is that the serious marketing efforts that are required by various government agencies, whether at the central government or at the state government, or the various PSUs of state and center, they definitely require to promote the GI-based products to give them that unique commercial advantage and superiority over non-GI-based products. Legal part of it, as I said, we are quite well aware of it, we defend it, and there is an institutional framework which is doing this work. In our national IPR policy of 2016, the traditional knowledge-based legal rights and the products have all been identified. The various patent cooperation treaties and the intergovernmental committees on this is a very well recognized community right, and I am sure in the times to come, as we progress and as our legal knowledge gets more and more refined, we will be able to defend it, formulate it, and globally across various communities, not just in India, because various communities in various countries have their unique body of traditional knowledge, which is their own property. So that is what we need to recognize both in India as well as in the WIPO. And I am very happy that TKDL has developed over the last 2 decades and we have reached this stage. At this stage, I won't like to say anything more, but once again, thanks and to CSIR for inviting me and giving me this opportunity of meeting so many great experts working in this field. And I had heard about Dr. Mashikar, but it's a good day for me that I'm seeing him in person, though on a video link. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Mahapatra, for your kind words. And I think you really highlighted the importance of legal rights and the framework in this, because it's not just a project, but it actually has a legal validity, what TKDL does. And this, I think, comes from your department and also from our next speaker, WIPO, whose recognition has also played an important role. So I would like to invite Ms. Begona Venero, who is a senior counselor at the Traditional Knowledge Division of WIPO. She has a brief introduction to her. She has received a law degree from Peru and also has a diploma in international studies and was also heading the patent office of Peru. And she has wide expertise in traditional knowledge and she has published many articles
on protection of traditional knowledge and intellectual property. Dr. Biban, over to you.
Good afternoon. Could you please confirm that you can see my presentation?
Yes, we can see your presentation and hear you as well.
Perfect. Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody. And first of all, let me thank the CSIR for inviting me to participate at this very important commemoration. My name is Begoña Penero, and I'm a member of the Traditional Knowledge Division of WIPO. There it is. So the World Intellectual Property Organization, as you know, is an agency of the United Nations specialized on intellectual property. We have 193 member states, and our mission is leading the development of a balanced and effective international intellectual property system that enables innovation and creativity for the benefit of all. These are some of the service areas of the Traditional Knowledge Division. I'm just going to mention two of them. The first one is facilitation of the work of the committee that has been created within WIPO to discuss these issues. Some speakers have already referred to this committee. The short name is the IGC. And another service area that I would mention is the second one. We provide information and technical assistance to regional and national authorities interested in establishing policies, strategies, action plans, and legislation in these areas. So the Traditional Knowledge Division deals with traditional knowledge, but also with traditional cultural expressions and genetic resources. So let's talk now about intellectual property and traditional knowledge. You all are familiar with traditional knowledge, so I don't need to explain you the characteristics of traditional knowledge, but what maybe is interesting mentioning, especially in the context of the international negotiations context, is that traditional knowledge, of course, shares many characteristics throughout the world, but there are some specificities linked to specific parts of the world. So traditional knowledge is not exactly the same, let's say, or the context within traditional knowledge is developed is not the same throughout the world, and that, of course, has an impact in the international negotiations, and that also has an impact on what member states of WIPO have managed to accomplish, and that also explains why India has been so successful with this initiative of the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. So, as I said, so there's traditional knowledge. Some years ago, the link between traditional knowledge and intellectual property was not very clear. Now, I think I can say that it's recognized in general that traditional knowledge is a creation of the human mind, and therefore deserves protection by the intellectual property system. The slide that I'm showing you tries to depict the different kinds of intellectual property tools that are available, not all of them, but some of them. As you can see, talking about intellectual property is talking about the patent system, the copyright system, the trademark system, and so on. All these tools are part of the intellectual property world, of the intellectual property system, but they are different and they have different rules. So that's something that needs to be considered. So what's the link between traditional knowledge and this conventional intellectual property system? Actually, we conducted a research some years ago to try to identify examples of how the intellectual property system was being used all over the world to somehow promote and protect traditional knowledge, or more precisely, actually, goods and services related to traditional knowledge. And we found some examples, in particular in the patent system, in the trademark system, and some examples of also of geographical indications. There's also a reference to copyright. But I would stress basically the trademark system, geographical indications, and the patent system. I'll go back to the example of the patent system in a couple of minutes. So this is the publication that was a result of this research that we undertook, and this is so the purpose of this publication is to show how indigenous peoples and local communities all over the world have indeed used the conventional intellectual property system to somehow promote and protect, as I said, products and services related to traditional knowledge and traditional cultural expressions, and in some cases also to prevent the misappropriation of this traditional knowledge. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that the intellectual property system solves all the problem and that it's, let's say, that it covers all the needs of the communities as regards the protection of their traditional knowledge, but it's the purpose, let's say, of this publication is to share the examples that we have identified. So maybe let me quickly go back to the examples in the related to patents. So those are taken from two patents that we have included in our guide. That both patents come from India, and what's interesting about these patents is that both belong to indigenous corporations, jointly with universities of Australia, different universities and different indigenous corporations, but in both cases, the holders of the patents are an indigenous corporation and a university. So is the TK protected in this case by a patent? Not really. So it's not the traditional knowledge which is protected. What is protected is an innovation that has been developed inspired or using the traditional knowledge as a basis, but it's the innovation that has been developed that of course has to comply with the patent patentability requirements that are protected by these patents. So the innovations can be protected, but the traditional knowledge itself is not really protected by these patents. So a discussion has started some years ago about whether it's necessary to protect traditional knowledge beyond the conventional intellectual property system. And so when we speak about protecting the traditional knowledge from an intellectual property perspective, we're basically saying that the holders of traditional knowledge should have a say over the access and the use of the traditional knowledge by third parties. That's, as you know, in the intellectual property system in general, it's about this. It's the use of intellectual property protected goods and services, or whatever it's protected, by third parties. And so we talk also about building a fence, about using intellectual property principles and values to prevent unauthorized or inappropriate uses of traditional knowledge by third parties. There's the terms that are usually used to describe this are misuse and misappropriation, and of course this is very linked to the experience of the traditional knowledge digital library, which has as its primary objective to prevent the misappropriation of traditional knowledge. So when we talk about this protection from an intellectual property perspective, there are different things that can be said, of course, and here, as we're going to see, there is not really an international treaty that deals with this issue and that provides a framework. So basically, what we have are legal measures that have been taken at a national level by some member states of WIPO, at a regional level also. And when we arrive to the international level, actually, this is what is being discussed at this committee, and I'll refer to that briefly. in a couple of minutes, and but also very importantly, and as a complement to the legal measures that have been put in place in some countries, regions, and that might be put in place in the future at an international level, there are the practical measures which are complementary to the others and which can play a very, very important role and can be extremely useful. And one example of those, of course, is the TKD. So let me talk briefly, allow me to talk briefly about the IGC. So this is the committee that was created within WIPO to discuss these issues related to genetic resources, traditional knowledge, and traditional cultural expressions. It's an intergovernmental committee, and usually we refer to it as the IGC. This is a mandate of the IGC for the biennium that started last year. And this are basically the instructions that the General Assembly of WIPO has provided the committee. Unfortunately, as you can imagine, the pandemic has changed the plans, and the 4 meetings that that had been foreseen to take place last year couldn't take place because of the pandemic. And let's hope that this year we'll be able to hold meetings of the IGC soon. But of course, it all depends on the pandemic, as you can imagine. Before moving to the next slide, something that I would also like to say is that, maybe going back to this slide, is that India has played a very active role in the IGC at different levels, and in particular, it has kept the IGC informed of the progress, of the outcomes, and of the success of the TK deal and of the milestones of the TK deal, which has been very interesting for all member states of WIPO and all participants at the IGC in general. So going back to our slide about how to protect from an IP perspective, let me now talk about the practical measures. And of course, I will start by mentioning the TK deal. This is an extract from a publication that I will show you in a couple of seconds. We have prepared this publication because there's so much interest in documenting traditional knowledge all over the world. And so we have, while preparing this document or this publication, of course, we have taken a very close look at the TK deal, and we have included information about the TK deal, as you can see, because it's a very good example for other member states of WIPO that are interested in documenting their traditional knowledge and that have similar objectives. So this is a publication that we prepared, and the extract that I showed was from this publication. So this is a toolkit that is about providing practical guidance on how to undertake a TK documentation project and how to address critical issues relating to intellectual property during the documentation process. And as I said, we have very much benefited from the experience of the TK deal while drafting this document. Why is the TK deal such a good example? Because one of the messages of this publication is that the first thing that has to be done if there's an initiative to document TK is to carefully consider the objectives of the documentation project. Why do you want to document? And there are many different reasons why a government or communities may want to document traditional knowledge. I have included only some examples there. There are others. But what's really important is that once you have decided why you want to document, you have to design the documentation project and in such a way that you make sure that this initiative is going to comply with the objectives that you put or that you agreed at the beginning. And the TK deal is a very good example of that. First of all, the objective is very clear. It's preventing the misappropriation of traditional knowledge, and the way it has designed in so many ways, of course, I don't need to explain you know how it's been designed and what are the characteristics of the TK deal, but these characteristics respond to this objective. And that's why the TK deal has been so successful and has complied to reach the objectives behind it. I wouldn't want to finish this presentation without mentioning two of the ways in which the WIPO and the CSIR have worked together in the past years. And as regards the TK deal, there are others also, but let me just mention these two. So 10 years ago, actually, we organized an international conference entitled Utilization of the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library as a Model for Protection of Traditional Knowledge. This was organized by WIPO and the CSIR. We had participants from over 35 countries, and a couple of years after that international conference, we also organized, in cooperation with the Department of Industrial Policy and Promotion and the CSIR, an international study visit to the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library. In this international visit, we had the participation of 16 countries. All the participants in both meetings were very happy and very grateful to the CSIR and to the TKD Unit for sharing all this very important information, and all found extremely useful the experience of the TK deal. And I was very pleased and honored to participate at both of them. So I'm reaching the end of my presentation. As regards WIPO and the resources that the Traditional Knowledge Division has developed, if you're interested, this is the link for accessing more information. And I would like to compliment all those that have been involved in the TK deal, in the success of the TK deal. 20 years is a lot of time, so I know that a lot of people have been involved, and all this is the result of the expertise of all those multidisciplinary skills that have been put in place, of the use of these state-of-the-art technologies, but especially of all these people that participated, of their expertise, of their insight, of all the CSIR officers and other officers from other agencies, government agencies that were involved. So I would like to compliment, of course, the government of India, but all those individuals as well, and wish you all the best for the years to come. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Venero, for your kind words and really highlighting and acknowledging the role of TKDL in protecting traditional knowledge and how it's an example for other countries as well. Thank you so much. Now we move to the address by the Chief Guest, Dr. Raghunath Mashikar. I think he needs no introduction to the audience, but maybe some of you who are new to CSIR. So I'd like to give a very brief introduction to Dr. Mashikar. Dr. Mashikar is a national research professor. He was the longest serving DG CSIR, and he was also the chairman of National Innovation Foundation and the president of Global Research Alliance. He has received honorary doctorates from 44 universities around the world. He has won many awards, and he is being recognized as a Fellow of Royal Society, Foreign Fellow of US National Academy, and Foreign Associate of American Academy of Arts and Sciences. And he has been honored with Padma Shri, Padma Bhushan, and Padma Vibhushan, which are some of the highest awards in the country. I think his role in the TKDL is really something very memorable, and he will highlight how the genesis of TKDL and the way forward. Thank you, Dr. Mashikar, for being with us, and we look forward to your address.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed for having me as a part of this celebration, 20 years of TKDL. Dr. Shekhar Mandate, Director General of CSIR, Sri Guru Prasad Mohapatra ji, Ved Rajesh Kotecha ji, Vishwajanani Satyagiri, Mrs. Begona Venero, and distinguished participants in today's celebration. This is the first time we are meeting each other in the new year, although a little late. So let me extend my very best wishes for a great 2021 I'm quite sure it will be quite different from 2020. And we are all talking about new normals. I hope some of the old normals, like shaking hands and giving warm hugs, will come back. I'm pretty fond of those old hugs, and I mean old normals when we talk about the new normals. Secondly, tomorrow is our Republic Day. In few hours, we'll start the celebrations. I extend my very best wishes to all our fellow men on a great Republic Day. Third, Shekhar, congratulations that you'll be entering the 80th year of our existence, CSIR's existence. It's a great organization. And I'm delighted that you are talking about 80 achievements in 80 years and creating an exhibition and talk series around it. I remember in 2003, we did 60 years. And at that time, I had done an exhibition of 60 things that we are proud of and took that exhibition around the country so that people know what accomplishments we have had. And there is one factor that was common when we did 60 years. One of them, where we said we are proud of, out of the 60 was TKDL. And when you are doing 80 years, one of the 80 that we are citing is TKDL. And I'm quite sure when 100 years are done, people will still say it is TKDL. And the reason is that it has been a big game changer, I would say. I must take a few minutes to take you through how some of the coincidences and some of the inspiring moments actually create, let's say, a thing of the kind that we are celebrating today. My mind goes back to the time when I was a director of National Chemical Laboratory, which is one of the laboratories of CSIR. 1993 was the year, and I remember there were summer days, and I was sitting along with my wife and my mother and my son, and suddenly a bird came, it fell, and it had broken its wing. And do you know, Dr. Venero, what my mother did? She went down, picked up some turmeric, all right, created a paste out of it and applied to the bird. Now that tells you about the Indian culture. For a moment, she did not say, oh my God, this works for a man or a woman, but not for a bird. Because in India, the tradition is that all living, whether it's a tree or whether it's an animal or whether it is human, they're all considered, that is the tradition. So that is why she had run. And in fact, she told me afterwards, I said, why did you apply that? And I remember that was stuck in my mind. And then it was in 1999, when I was sipping a cup of tea in the morning, I saw Times of India, and there was a report by N. Suresh that the wound healing properties of turmeric were patented. So I told my wife, I laughed. I said, look, a patent has to have novelty, non-obviousness, utility. Where is the novelty? When my mother knew it, my mother knew it. And you know, Mahapatra, I don't think from here, I think from here. So in the evening, I was giving a lecture, Hussain Zahir Memorial Lecture. And P.N. Aksar, you will remember the former Principal Secretary to Prime Minister, he was chairing it. And I declared that I'm going to fight it. Actually, CSIR had no right to fight that patent. It was yours. It was then DIPP's. But somehow or the other, without taking anybody's permission, spontaneously I said, and of course, there was a lot of stir. But nation trusted me and they said, yes, CSIR can take charge. I must recognize here N. Subbaran, the head of the Intellectual Property Management Division, who gathered all the evidence, by the way. Some of it was had to do with translation of Sanskrit slokas, some Urdu, material, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we applied, and within 14 days, it was revoked. But what was very important, again, very important for you to know, Venera, was that even our ancient wisdom, which was in Sanskrit, when translated into English, was considered as an evidence for this, not just paper in Indian Journal of Medical Research. So it was a path-breaking case in many ways. But what it did was very interesting. So I raised the issue. See, then again, there was a lucky break for me that I was the chairman of Standing Committee on Information Technology, SKIT. Because at that time, WIPO was very keen that, digital access to patent information should be available to the developing countries. So I chaired that committee for 2.5 years, and we had 170 plus sessions. We created that WIPO-net at that point in time, by the way. Of course, now today it's a digital world. And at that time, I remember asking them, referring to this patent, how do you define knowledge? Because you had more than 10,000 subgroups, but there was only one subgroup on traditional knowledge. All right. And secondly, I said knowledge generated in Caltech, MIT, Princeton, Harvard, Cambridge is knowledge, and knowledge generated by my ancestors in laboratories of knowledge through experience is no knowledge. How can that? And that is where, by the way, the International Patent Classification Subcommittee was formed. We had China, we had India, we had Europe, we had US and Japan. And then I must say, I must give credit to V.K. Gupta. But for V.K. Gupta, we would not be celebrating this evening, by the way. All right? He had come with a systems engineering background and, of course, IT background and so on and so forth. And we talked about it. And it was his brainchild, Shekhar, that we created a traditional knowledge resource classification. Because if the knowledge is available in a textual form, in a Sanskrit text, there is no way a patent examiner in US, for example, would know it. Even if it is translated in English, he wouldn't be. But there is a particular resource classification that had to be done. And I give 100% credit to VK to have done that. And then the International Patent Classification Committee agreed to put traditional knowledge. So today you have 200 subgroups, by the way. At that time, there was hardly one out of 10,000. That was the history. But one of the great triggers for that, I must say, also came as a break. Because it was a revocation of a US patent, okay? And we used to have, I think VK will remember the names better than I do, but we used to have representatives of US. And I had a discussion with them. And they invited me to US Patent Office. So what I did, and again, VK helped me, we took some sources, translated them into English, and I took the patent that were given. And they had a meeting with the senior officials there. And I spoke to them. It is not just one wrong patent. There are more than 2,000 patents that have gone wrong, as a matter of fact. And we can't challenge each. By the way, we just spent 5 lakhs on this. Many people feel that we spend crores, etc. Just 500,000 rupees. 70 rupees makes $1. So it was hardly anything, by the way, to win this, basically. Anyway. And that was the time, I must say, I'm fair to USPTO. They showed to me. They showed to me things they normally don't show. And they said, how do we do the search? So they said, when this patent came, we put turmeric, wound healing powder, etc., and see what came on the screen. Nothing came on the screen. Because they said that knowledge is up here or in your old books. We don't have access. That is where the idea of the traditional knowledge digital library was. And here, I must acknowledge and applaud Shailaja Chandra, a fantastic secretary, Rajeshji, who was your predecessor. We worked close together like a brother and a sister, and there was a terrific team of 100 people that was created, which was late. We had intellectual property experts, IT experts, Sanskrit scholars, Ayurvedic experts, and so on and so forth. That was the birth of TKD, basically. Right. Now, what has happened is that it is interesting that in 1999, I was speaking in WIPO about the importance of recognizing traditional knowledge by the patent offices. And exactly 10 years later, in 2009, on 23rd November, just before President Obama and Dr. Manmohan Singh, our Prime Minister, met, there was an agreement that was signed between USPTO and India that US Patent Office, anytime any patent linked to traditional knowledge will come, they will not do so till they have got look to the TKDL traditional knowledge research qualification we are created. And of course, we signed agreements with most of the major patent offices. So you can see a decade what transpired and how things basically changed. So that is one aspect of it. The second is we have talked about misappropriation. But very frankly, I'm not very fond of laying emphasis on that, although I've been responsible for this. I think there is a knowledge, and knowledge has to be for the benefit of all. And the benefit of knowledge is that you create something better for the humankind, for the future. So rather than just prevention, I would like to talk about promotion, Shekhar. I would like to talk about our creating something new out of that knowledge. So there is no point in just hiding it and giving limited access to it. If you look at our new science, technology, innovation policy, which is under discussion at the moment, in fact, I'm sending my comments this evening, you will find there is a very important aspect there about open science, okay? And we are going to create a great repository, so as to say, of all databases, all this, etc. I think I love that particular principle because knowledge has to be used for the good of the people at large, not just India. And you might consider, Shekhar, because it was held up for a different reason. There were valid arguments that actually we added value to what was there in the books and created the classification, etc., etc. So there was certainly inventive step in that particular. But I think context decides the content. There is a new context now, and you might want to reconsider it in terms of the access. That's the second point I want to make. The third point, Rajesh, is the bigger point. That is, I remember I was invited by Shraddheya Nanaji Deshmukh to Chitrakoot, where we are talking about it. And I remember I talked about the idea of creating a golden triangle: traditional medicine, modern science. Why did I say that? Because those were the days when Vaidyas will not talk to doctors, doctors will not talk to Vaidyas. All right, scientists will look down upon the Ayurveda and the rest of it, etc. I said no, it is all knowledge. Some of it has been generated empirically, some of it through so-called methods of science. It doesn't matter, but it is knowledge none the same. So I proposed at that time this golden triangle as a Chitrakoot declaration. And Nanaji was very close to, I remember Sushma-ji, who created actually Ayush. And that is where Ayush started this golden triangle project. And within CSIR, Shekhar, we had an interlinked project by different laboratories. And that came up when I visited Arya Vaidyashala, Kotakkal. I was there for 2 days. And I remember Dr. Variathan, who brought us together, when Dr. Warrior of Arya Vaidyashala and I signed the agreement, CSIR signed the agreement, he said, 2 rivers are meeting today, 2 holy rivers are meeting today. Ancient wisdom, which is Arya Vaidyashala, and modern science, which is CSIR. The only thing I ask is that why did it take so long for them to meet that Sangam? It should have happened long time ago. So I'm very happy the word has changed completely now, and we are in a different mode. One more point I'd like to make, although I've been given 30 minutes, I don't want to test your patience. I'll finish early. The benefits of using the knowledge that has been gained empirically and validating it are actually enormous. Rajeshji, the name of my laboratory in Jammu and Kashmir was Regional Research Laboratory. Before I left, I converted to Indian Institute of Integrative Medicine, where all this Sangam that we talk about actually take place. And for example, in Ayurveda, you will know more than I do, there is what is called the Trikuta. And within Trikuta, there is black pepper. And they found out that active substance piperine, for example, does bioenhancing. Bioenhancing, Dr. Venero, means that if you have taken, let us say, certain drug, okay, and the bioavailability of it, increases. What it means is that rather than taking 4 tablets, you can take 2 tablets and get the same kind of plasma concentration. So you can see the cost reduces, toxicity reduces. But what they did was that they found the science behind it. Why does it work the way they do? Number one. And number two, there was a complete validation of it by doing preclinical phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. And today, you can actually buy that drug that is manufactured by Cadila, by the way. All right, bringing benefits to the society. So where did that knowledge come from? That knowledge came from ancient practice, but it was validated by modern science. Okay? That is most important. See, others have been doing it. I remember when I was president of Indian Science Congress, Richard Ernst, who had won the Nobel Prize for functional magnetic resonance, had come, and he showed a PNAS paper, Proceedings of National Academy of Science paper, where they had shown, why acupuncture works the way it does, how it acts on cellular and at a molecular level. And therefore, I'm very happy and proud of Dr. Samir Brahmachari. For example, we talk about Ayurveda on one side, biology on the other side. Valyathan created Ayurvedic biology. Similarly, Samir Brahmachari, he created, we talk about Ayurveda on one side and genomics on the other side. He created Ayurgenomics. And the paper on Ayurgenomics appeared in Proceedings of National Academy side. And I'm very proud to tell you, Rajeshji, that, when we talk about, Kapha, Vata and Pitta, those words you will imagine will not appear in Proceedings of National Academy of Science. They appeared for the first time. So I think the main point I'm trying to make is that these artificial barriers in terms of knowledge, to me, they are not acceptable, very frankly. And humanity will develop far further if we, rather than looking at a preventive approach, misappropriation approach, take a common appropriation for a human good sort of approach in future. I think it is worth thinking in terms of WIPO also, because we have had these divisions and wars. I've witnessed it for 2.5 years when I was sitting in that chair, when you actually reflected the WIPO assembly. I remember my days there. I think time has come for humanity to turn sort of a new leaf. I don't want to go any further. All that I would say is that this is one of the happiest days in my life. I mean, 20 years of TKDL. It is a major milestone for CSIR. I congratulate you, Dr. Shekhar Mandate, all our CSIR family. I call it a CSIR family. I congratulate Ayush. I congratulate DIPP. You were extremely generous. Let me end by saying something, by the way. What happened was that in India, with even a small thing, people praise you or they're happy. So what happened was that the turmeric, this thing, had evoked a sort of this thing, war against America is one, and that kind of a thing, And I remember, Mohbatra ji, what happened one day. This Vico Presidency felicitated me. And the chief guest there was Dr. Gangadhar Gadgil, a great economist. And he knew how government works. And he said, look, scientists, how come you got a patent battle? It is the prerogative of DIPP. All right. The important part was that you were gracious enough to allow me to do that on behalf of the nation. So I'm grateful to you also. So I'm grateful to you all for doing me this honor and having this very special evening in my life. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Mashikar, for taking time. And I'm very happy that the first success story of this 80 years is by none other than you, for talking about TKDL. That's really a milestone. I think from 60 years to 80 years, we've covered tremendous ground. And as you were talking about the turmeric latte, which we call the doodh haldi, which every mother gives it, and we have called, is called the storm in the US now, which what they call it as a turmeric latte. So I think we still continue to export our traditional knowledge. And as you rightly said, we should consider it as a promotion of knowledge. And I think SARS-CoV-2 has really shown us that open access and open knowledge sharing is really important for humanity to fight together. And again, thank you again, Dr. Mashikar. And I think with these few words, I will request Dr. Vijayalakshmi to give the vote of thanks. And I'm very happy that TKDL has been the first success story. And Dr. Mashikar, actually, as you were talking about Ayurgenomics, the collaboration with Ministry of Ayush is going very well. In fact, Ayurgenomics is a Center of Excellence is supported by Ministry of Ayush. So I think with all the stakeholders, I think it's very important. This is a good example of how multiple stakeholders can contribute to the country.
Again, thank you all and Dr. Vijay.
Thank you, Dr. Geeta. The chief guest for the evening, Dr. Mashikar, our guests of honor, Vaidya Shri Kotechaji, Shri Mohapatraji, Ms. Venero, Dr. Mande, TG CSIR, distinguished guests, colleagues and friends. It is an honor for me to propose the vote of thanks today as we celebrate 2 decades of TKDL. First of all, on behalf of the TKDL team, let me begin by thanking our chief guest, Dr. Mashikar, for his inspirational address. Thank you, sir. We thank you for envisioning the Traditional Knowledge Digital Library and giving us an opportunity to be part of this unique experience. I wish to thank Vaidya Shri Kotechaji for his words of encouragement and his constant support to the TKDL endeavor. We thank you, sir, to have been with us in spite of your prior commitments. I wish to express our sincere appreciation to Shri Mohapatraji for being present here with us to share his thoughts and supporting us in Sir all international forums. Thank you, sir. Our special thanks to Ms. Venero for accepting our invitation so readily and agreeing to be a part of this program. We greatly value your kind words of appreciation. Thank you. I take this opportunity to thank DG CSIR and Secretary DSIR, Dr. Mande, for his undiminished trust in the TKDL activity and his constant support and encouragement. Thank you, sir. The commemoration of this milestone in the TKDL journey would not have been possible if not for all those who have contributed to TKDL in several ways at various stages of this journey, supporting us, encouraging us, guiding us, and helping us evolve. The list is too long for me to spell out in this short period of time, but I wish to once again place on record my sincere gratitude to every one of them. We thank CSIR for commencing the celebration of CSIR's 80 years, 80 stories with TKDL and help us organize this program. It is an honor. Thank you. Finally, my sincere gratitude to all of you who have joined us today to celebrate this momentous occasion with us. Thank you very much. Namaskar.
Thank you.